Dear Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be here with you. Given the limited time, I'm unable to present the many different ways in which one could enter the ranks of the Benefice clergy of the Győr Cathedral chapter during the early modern period, whether from a parish, from the Cathedral chaplaincy, from another chapter, or through court service in the bishop's household, and so on. After briefly summarizing these, however, I would like to speak about the most intriguing group, namely the canons who obtained their benefices through royal recommendation. These short case studies may shed light on the ecclesiastical circumstances in early 18th century Hungary. But before I move on the examination of the body, I would like to say a few words about the Diocese of Győr. In 1001, King Saint Stephen I, probably at the same time as he founded the bishopric of Győr, also established a cathedral chapter to assist the bishop, providing it with an internal hierarchy and estates. The diocese covers the western part of Hungary, with its seat in a prominent location halfway between Vienna and Buda. In the Middle Ages, the body had 32 members, but as a result of the Ottoman-Turkish destruction, it shrank to the third of its size, because it was unable to finance the large number of benefices due to the destruction of its estates. In 1700, Prince Christian August of Saxony, Bishop of Győr and later Archbishop of Esztergom, set the number of the benefices in the cathedral chapter at 14. To this day, there are 14 canonries in the Győr Cathedral chapter. Between 1658 and 1783, 113 clergymen had been elevated to the rank of canonry in the Cathedral chapter of Győr. I see that from the 40 canons with unknown career backgrounds, 34.8%, the largest group in the Cathedral chapter, those who came from pastoral ministry. If I add up the number of canons coming from rural parishes and cathedral chaplaincies, the total is 54, which is 48.2% of the total number. According to this, entry into the chapter was a realistically achievable goal for the lower clergy. If we also consider the number of those who may have served in parishes but are currently unknown, it can be safely said that half of the canons rose in the ecclesiastical hierarchy from the lower clergy, who performed most of the pastoral duties immediately before their installation in the chapter. 19 members of the Győr body came from various priestly careers, not primarily concerned with pastoral care. Here I have counted those who transferred from other chapters, bishops, and those involved in court service, mainly church administrators. Their share is thus 17%, which is significantly lower than the proportion of those coming from the lower clergy. This can be also understood as meaning that the current pastors of Győr saw greater help in the direct advisors who were selected from the diocese or from various parts of the country, directly from the leadership of the faithful communities. In many cases, they were themselves delegated clerics with practical knowledge of bureaucracy and church administration from their own ranks to their chapter. A supporter who drew the bishop's attention to a cleric worthy of a canonry and his work before a decision was made always proved useful. Of course, I am not claiming that this was the only way to gain admission to the cathedral chapter through powerful supporters. However, during the investigation, the network of patron-client relationships in early modern society became apparent at the local level, which clearly illustrates one of the main social driving forces of the 17th and 18th century, the tangled world of favors and kindnesses. And now let me say a few words about the commendation, especially the royal commendation. I am aware of 10 successful commendations from this period based on archival sources, 2 of which were self-recommendations by the clergyman. I have identified 10 additional cases where, although I do not have access to the archival sources, the circumstances, the clergyman's places of service and career suggest that he may have had a recommender. These 20 individuals represent 17.7% of the total membership of the body. The composition of the 10 individuals who are known for certain and the identity of their recommenders present a mixed picture, which is worth categorizing. Although the group is small, the identities and motivations of the recommenders are so diverse that it can still be applied and extrapolated to the entire chapter. First, we must mention those who obtained the style through royal recommendation. It happened that sometimes the Habsburg ruler asked for the dignity of the canon of Győr for one of his proteges. I think that given the exclusivity of the cases, these were most likely the only such recommendations. In our case, this means the appointment of Anton Thurn, Friedrich Füchner, and Anton Joseph Gaun. In this context, I do not consider it realistic that there were any royal recommendations that were unsuccessful and that the clergyman selected for the style would have remained without appointment. In 1718, two deaths struck the Cathedral chapter. Before the death of József Ribic in June, Ignác Amadé passed away. In his reply to the chapter dated 9th of 1718 April, Christian August indicated that he had received the body's notification of Amadé's death. What is interesting about the letter is that the Prince Bishop rejected the chapter's request to appoint a new person to the vacant position, saying that the Empress had already requested the right to make the appointment months earlier. This was not merely a matter of recommendation or commendation, but rather the Empress Elizabeth Christine was able to directly designate the cleric to be appointed. As a result of this seemingly unusual procedure, the Austrian nobleman Count Anton Casimir Thurn was appointed to the Győr style. Later, Thurn became the Bishop of Pécs between 1733 and 1734, albeit for a short time. However, it is perhaps less well known that probably owed his first ecclesiastical appointment in Hungary to his female relative, Rosalia Thurn. Rosalia pursued a career as a lady-in-waiting at the court of the Empress, during which she held several positions and served continuously at court between 1717 and 1740. In the censuses between 1717 and 1719, Rosalia Thurn is listed as a lady-in-waiting, or in German Hofdame, in the Empress's court. It is not difficult to imagine that a relative belonging to the Empress entourage who was in a daily contact with her asked for some initial help launching the young family member's career. In Győr, it is a rare and fortunate case that we can see the entire process of obtaining a canonical stone. It begins with the identification of the milieu and actors involved in granting of the benefice, continues with the bishop's mention of the queen's wish, and ends with the installation. We can follow the entire process of foreign cleric obtaining the benefice in the early 18th century. The lady in the picture, she is the Empress. This is not the only case, not the only known case from this century in which a ruler actively participated in filling a canonry in Győr. After the death of Canon Mátyás Bognics in 1720, Baron Anton Joseph Gaun joined the Cathedral chapter, and in his letter of appointment, Bishop Christian August notes that he was rewarded with the dignity of canon at the request of the recently deceased Queen Eleonora of Pfalz-Neuburg. On the picture. Contemporary press sources also make it clear that Gaun had personal connections with the highest circles of the court. According to a report published in the Wiener Zeitung on the 16th of June 1721, several members of the imperial family attended a holy mass in the Schottenkirche in Vienna. That morning, which was celebrated by Anton Joseph Gaun, referred to as the Abbot of Monostor. The Viennese press was apparently not yet aware of Gaun's elevation to the rank of canon, which is not surprising, since he had been installed in the Cathedral chapter a week earlier, on the 8th of June, as a result of his successful commendation. It seems that after completing his official business in Győr, The newly appointed canon quickly returned to Vienna. How this lucrative relationship between Crown and the royal court developed would require further research. However, it is clear that at the same time as Anton Joseph Braun von Löwengang was receiving court support, his relative, Franz Egidius Braun von Löwengang, was serving in the imperial court as court steward, or in German, Zergardner. Presumably, the combination of a personal connections and court ties, even if those ties did not imply the most personal relationship with the ruling family, proved sufficient to earn position. According to a short chronicle of the life of the Cathedral chapter led by Canon Leopold Pilati, Friedrich Füchner was installed on the 22nd of April 1741 on the recommendation of Francis Stephen of Lorraine. Füchner was a canon of the Collegiate Church of the Saint-Georges in Nancy, which essentially operated within the princely palace complex of Lorraine. The church of the Collegiate chapter was the burial place of the ruling family of Lorraine from the beginning of the 14th century. It seems that Prince Francis Stephen invited the canon of the Collegiate chapter, which was an important part of the court representation of the Princess of Lorraine, to his new homeland. It is conceivable that Baron Füchner and Francis Stephen, who were of a similar age, knew each other personally. Let us not forget that Francis Stephen of Lorraine was the sovereign of the small state from 1729 to 1737 under the name of Francis III. Füchner obtained Hungarian citizenship on the 2nd of March 1741, and on the same day he was appointed titular provost of Iváncsa by the ruler Queen Maria Theresa. Shortly thereafter, in April, he was installed in the Győr Cathedral chapter, where he held the dignity of provost of St. Róbert from 1755 until his death. In summary, it can be said that during the period under review, the Győr Cathedral chapter was open to a lower clergy as a career opportunity. At the same time, from the point of view of the bishops, the Hungarian aristocracy, and the Habsburg ruling family, the granting of and allocation of canonries was one of the key elements in building ecclesiastical clientele, patron clientele relationships. Thank you for your attention. Obrigado.